What's good, y'all, and welcome to another vid. Today's topic, every single general artifact in this game. I'll be giving you an idea of how many you need, how good they are, where you can use them, and which you should insta sell. We're going to be going category by category, so starting off with the super general ones for all classes, and then we go class by class. Without further ado, I don't think we need to talk a whole lot and we can get straight into it with the general artifacts. So once you move past AMR stage, make it stage 10. At that point, you're going to be able to get your hands on legendary artifacts, and every single one of these is an insta sell besides Keen Wisdom. Keen Wisdom is, as much as it is the early game GOAT, if you really are looking for the best artifacts once you start your game, getting Keen Wisdoms up is your key to success. The goal there is to get them to plus 22 because you don't need the plus 25 upgrade, especially because the base stats don't go really higher. And what Keen Wisdom does, and what I will also do alongside of it, is pull up the artifact effect. And as you can see, then when there's an ally within a tile, it increases the attack. And the reason why this is so important is because it's post-deployment attack buff. And this artifact, especially on someone like a Diao even, is still the best in slot unless you're starting to upgrade that exclusive artifact on her. So it is favored for everything early game, and then later it is mostly used on invigoration, or better said inspiration heroes like Constance, like Dolores, like Beelzebub, if you don't have a artifact that already gives a higher percentage multiplier. So Keen Wisdom, something still dear to my heart, but the rest are insta sell. Now it's time for us to move on to tank artifacts. Soulbane Rosary was expected to be good on Constance, but overall it really doesn't perform well. Constance is the only one you would ever consider using it on, and even on a Constance it sucks in comparison to the competition. So Soulbane Rosaries are a instant no-brain sell. Solar Embrace sadly is the same thing. What it does is when taking damage your def is increased, so it only really works on defense-based tanks to the greatest success. Furthermore, you don't get a block increase, and also it is a legendary artifact. So another trash tier, another instant sell. WorGuides Unity has some early game viability, especially with max HP being the most important stat on tanks, especially on someone like Oleg. So we can at least give it a C, but it really isn't all that great. You also don't really need to keep it. And then we have North's Will. North's Will is the hard carry of the North's type artifact. And that is because whenever a hero loses a shield, they restore 10% HP. There's exactly one use case for this, and that is Oleg. Oleg has the ability to give himself this shield, and in scenarios where you're either fighting only one or maximum two enemies, or where you're using your Oleg against units without having a healer on the field, the North's Will artifact is the best you can get. For example, also used in Arena. So North's Will, you want one copy at 25, the rest you can then proceed to sell. After the North's Will, we get another disappointment, which is the Nightmare Serpent. Taking damage 5 times restores HP equal to 3%. This effect can effect can only happen once every 4 seconds. It does get better with upgrades, but overall you don't have a block increase, and the HP restore is so minor that you barely really notice it. Overall, Nightmare Serpent, yes, you could also try to use it on an Oleg, but it's less reliable and the HP restore is less important, so I would also just get instantly rid of it. It really isn't worth the trouble, rather take the extra meteorites. Heart of Thorns, when taking damage, there's an 8% chance of dealing damage equal to 10% max HP to the attacker. It works very early on, but once HP values start scaling, anything past, I would say, gear rates 13 is kind of the point where Heart of Thorn already loses out massively again. Rex's Vow. Rex's Vow is another case of artifact you can somewhat use on someone like an Oleg, but it still isn't all that great. I guess you could put it into the insta sell category, but it at least has somewhat of a space. Death Knell, when the hero is employed, increases defense by 5%. When the hero's HP drops to 40% or below, you instantly restore a percentage of HP. The problem is it only works once, so you can put it into the insta-sell category. Now onto the mythic artifacts. A Dragon Goblet increases defense by 10% and damage by 10%. When taking damage, both defense increase and damage increase are doubled for 8 seconds. So this artifact is a bit of a weird one. The only time you ever use this is when you're using a damage dealing tank, like for example a Cyrus in the Conqueror Codex, and preferably someone that scales better with defense. So I guess we're giving it a low C because it has some use, but most of the time you're just gonna sell it. Cadaver Dagger is kind of the same thing as Dragon Goblet, but this time for max HP, so it's already more useful. It is something that finds a space on heroes like Malvira, but overall I would still not prioritize it, though you should at least keep a copy of it, and once you have everything else finished, you can think about upgrading it. Now Astral Obelisk is pretty much a must-have for Constances. So Constance uses a couple artifacts, but Astral Obelisk is pretty much a must-have if you want to shorten the duration between, or the downtime between, the invigoration ultimates or inspiration ultimates from your Constance. So Astral Obelisk, you want at least at minimum one of them up to the maximum level. Then Tuning Crystal. Tuning Crystal is another of these weird ones where you at least want to keep a copy, because you can once again use this on offensive tanks like Cyrus to at least have the ability to restore some HP in content where you can't bring a healer. Once again, think Healer Codex. It's also kind of specific, but it has its place, so as long as you have a copy, you're fine. You can sell off the rest. Then something that did gain a bit of... Okay, let's start with Goddess Grace. Goddess Grace is a purely defense increasing artifact which works fine enough on defense based tanks like Garn and like Edith, but only if you're facing below 2 enemies, and the reason is going to get clear with the Bastion Ring. But overall, Goddess Grace, it's decent. It's not super great, but on defense based tanks it is somewhat alright. Bloodlust Phylactery increases damage by 1% when damage is taken, stacks up to 15 times. It's kind of the same thing as a Dragon Blood Goblet. You can use it on like offensive tanks, but offensive tanks really aren't the thing outside maybe Malvira, and even then Malvira is probably better off with a Cadaver Dagger. We come to the Unobstructed King, the single best artifact in this game when it comes to tanks, and that's Bastion Ring. Not only is Bastion Ring the only tank artifact that provides block increase, but also the more enemies you are blocking, the more physical and magical damage reduction you're getting. Rule of thumb, whenever you have to defend against 2 or more enemies, Bastion Ring is the best you can get, because this magical and physical damage reduction is going to stack up to 4 times. So the more enemies you are facing, the stronger it is. And if it's only a single enemy, that's where the bit of variance with other tanks and whatnot comes in. Like for example, Regal Crest. What Regal Crest does, it increases the healing received. So it is especially favored on someone like a Toreador in the current Abyss, because you can offset the Lord bonus from Toreador, which the Nightmare Lord bonus, which reduces the healing received. So for just single target survival, Regal Quest does have its space, and we might have an argument to put it higher. But overall, Bastion Ring is the best in 99% of cases. Obviously, if you have an exclusive artifact with extra block, it's debatable, but if there's no exclusive and you're looking for defending against 2 or more enemies, Bastion Ring is king. Time for fighter artifacts, starting it off with the Prey Slayer. Prey Slayer is an instant sale because every one of us is guaranteed to get a Scarlet Hunt on the first Mythic Forge, and it is just a worse version of it. Continuing with worse versions, you have the Crest of Thunder. Crest of Thunder is just a worse version of the Eye of Sin. also making this a easy, no-brain insta-sell, bringing us to WorGuides Ambition. A lot of it has been tried. A lot of people have been trying to make use of it, trying to see it as something useful on something like a Lust, on a Deimos. But the returns of a WorGuides Ambition were always lower than what you would expect. They always lost out against the mythic versions, against the mythic fighter artifacts at the end of the day. So you can sell a WorGuides Ambition without having any without really spending too much on it. But if you really wanted to, you can keep a copy, a single one. North's Horn. North's Horn, when shielded, increases crit rate by 10%. When the shield disappears, the crit rate bonus will last for 6 more seconds. Outside of you being a complete beginner, this is absolutely pointless. Not only is there no reliable way to shield someone, especially not permanently, the crit rate bonus is so useless because you really are going to get your crit rate from your gear anyway, making this a no-brain insta-sell, bringing us to Nightmare Shadow, which increases your crit rate by 5% for every 5 attacks. It is the same thing. You're going to get your crit rate from elsewhere. You do not need a Nightmare Shadow for this. You can get rid of it ASAP. Rage Chain, which gives you a 0.0% crit damage increase for every 1% HP lost. You can also yeet that instantly into the trash because it's just a worse version of a Flux Pendant. Next up, Voros Wrath. Voros Wrath, which increases the crit rate. Same thing. You can insta-sell that one. And then you've got Lucky Legacy. Lucky Legacy, at the moment it doesn't work. At the moment it's not all that useful. And the only time you would want to use this is in a fight that you only have to play once. Because if you're relying on the RNG for you to regenerate twice the cost from a cost generator, that is not going to work in auto fights. So if it's a one-off fight, this can be useful. I would at least get 1 copy to 25. And then don't think about it. But for now, there was never a scenario where Lucky Legacy truly helped in you getting a win in a stage. Now let me see, where's this artifact? Why can't I find it? Am I blind? Slayer's Malice. Maybe it's not in this pool. Man, these whole pools with like different artifacts and whatnot, that's weird. It's just weird. But yeah, here you go. Slayer's Malice, when HP is above 80%, increases damage by 10%. Honestly, for a legendary artifact, it's half decent. If you don't have anything better at the moment, you can definitely use it. But outside of that, I would really not rely on it a whole lot. You're going to get better artifacts really quickly down the line. Starting it off with one of the best, and that is Shattered Hilt. Shattered Hilt increases your single target damage, and then for every 5 instances of damage dealt, you get stacking single target damage increase. So for fights that just last a little bit longer, for fights where you can get a bit of build up, you're going to get the best damage output on Shattered Hilt. I would rank Shattered Hilt probably already as an S tier artifact when it comes to single target damage. Shattered Hilt should be superior. And then we are going to have the Talisman of Resolve. When shielded, increases damage by 20%. So it's the same thing, and at least at the moment, there is no reliable way to shield people. There is no reliable way to proc this properly. So it's not good enough yet, though. If we at some point ever get a proper shield synergy team going with, for example, Phaecia and then whatnot, we kind of need a hero that does inspiration and shielding at the same time for this to see any play. But for now, it is kind of bad. Key of the Forsaken. Key of the Forsaken is actually quite decent. There's a couple heroes on which it works, and copy-wise you want to keep a single copy. Key of the Forsaken is something for your tanky geared fighters. So think Raiga as a tank in Abyss 1. Think Jira when it comes to buffing her up. So yeah, Jira and Raiga are like the most the biggest beneficiaries of this artifact. So keep a copy of it, bring one up to 25. You never know when you're going to need it. Realm Tier. Now Realm Tier is a bit of a weird one. Realm Tier, at least in Nightmare Guild Boss, is by far the single best artifact for a fighter, and that is because the tiles of the boss also count as range tiles, giving you around a 40+% damage bonus. But outside of that, Rentier really heavily relies on your hero having additional range, because it doesn't count on the tile they stand on, but only the tile after. So for example, if we take this 3%, which goes up to an 8% at maximum level, and then we do the calculation, someone like, okay, Oleg also. Oleg has one tile range, so one tile in front of him, meaning a 3% bonus. Then someone like Ephasia would have two tiles in front of her, with the tile below her not counting, giving her a 6% bonus. Then someone... you get the deal, right? And then, for example, Xena. Xena would have already a 9% bonus, or a 24% at maximum level. So Rentier is quite nice. It's the best you can do in Guild Boss NM4. Outside of that, Shattered Hilt does outdamage it. Lunacy Visor is an S tier, but that's just because there's so many scenarios where it's that useful to have an extra block on your fighter, be it Arena, be it in Gear Dungeon 2 when your Volker needs to block one more. If you need some extra survivability on a hero, putting it on a fighter, giving them the chance to regenerate max HP on their own. It is really good, and you want to keep, I would say, 2 copies. Get 2 copies up to 25 and you're pretty much done. I don't believe you're gonna need more than 2 in a single stage. And there might even be potential for this to be even better if, for example, we ever get a natural 4-block fighter that can use this artifact, bringing them up to 5, which would make them a bona fide tank. Now we've got the Eye of Sin. Now, Eye of Sin, also S tier. It was kind of underappreciated before, but now with the emergence of more AoE content, like for example the left side or the bottom lane in Gear Dungeon 2, the Eye of Sin is pretty much your go-to artifact. Even in AoE Arena, with fighters being a bit on the uprise, Eye of Sin is the best thing you can get when it comes to raw AoE damage potential, as well as also damage potential after kill. Frigid Flame is a bit of a weird one. If you can make use of it, the damage bonus is quite nice, going up to, I believe, 33%. But it is really hard to make use of. Most stages nowadays do AoE damage, and AoE damage is going to reset the stacks of Frigid Flame. So if you can ensure that you can place a fighter in a position where they do not get hit, then this artifact is obviously better. But with the way current content is, that just isn't anything realistically possible. But I guess you could make use of Frigid Flame in something like, for example, Gear Raid 1 Behind the Wall. Next up, we've got the Amulet of Arteries. Amulet of Arteries, at least at the moment, is a C tier artifact. It was meant to be a kind of like Wailing Skull competitor exclusive to Selene. It got changed into a normal mythic artifact, and what it does is, for every X amount of instances of magic attack inflicted, Selene Shadow Strike is summoned upon 3 enemies, dealing 80% damage. So it's kind of like an AoE Wailing Skull, but just worse with stats and worse with damage. So yeah, Amulet of Arteries is pretty trash. You might even be able to say, just sell it completely. Next, we've got the Flux Pendant. No, okay, Wailing Skull. I mean, Wailing Skull is king. There's no discussion. If you can get away with using a Wailing Skull is so far above everyone else. If it was possible, I would give it an S+ tier rating, right here above everyone. But Wailing Skull is by far the very best when it comes to fighter artifacts. The only drawback is if you are using a hero with Wailing Skull as well as a Wukong on the field at the same time, you might be running into ground tile placement issues. But Wailing Skull, it is still the best artifact, and one of the examples is if you put this on a Voltron, it easily and by miles outdamages his exclusive. So yeah, Wailing Skull is king. Flux Pendant has seen more and more of a use. Overall, you can get up to 30% crit damage as long as you're just naturally, and then as long as your HP drops below 50, you're going to get the doubling of it. It is pretty popular with chaotic fighters. They can make the best use out of it. And also, do not buy Flux Pendant from the guild shop. Do not buy it from the guild shop. Just wait for you to craft it from the exclusive forge. Do not buy it from the guild shop. It is still as good or as decent as it is. It is not worth your points. Lastly, Scarlet Hunt. It was meta back when the game first released, with Salazar being the strongest single target hero and you having reliable sources of bleed left, right, up, down and center. But the biggest drawback on Scarlet Hunt is the fact that not only is it conditional at only bleeding targets, but even then the 30% damage boost of a Scarlet Hunt loses out against a Shattered Hilt. So even if you bring a bleed, even if you use it, you're still better off using a Shattered Hilt, which makes Scarlet Hunt somewhere in the B tier, I guess. And probably we could move Eye of Sin down because it's not so useful. I think this kind of completes our fighter tier list. Let's move on to the next category. Time for the healer artifact, starting it off with the Oneric Band. Once again, a artifact thought to be useful for inspiration heroes, but the biggest problem is the 8% never gets bigger. It stays at 8%, making it inferior to even a Keen Wisdom. And overall, it doesn't really have a purpose on any hero, making Oneric Band a instant sell. Same goes for Nephrite Portfolio or Nephrite Folio, which is just a weaker version of the Bright Root Ring. Up until the Chalice of Use, which increases healing multiplier by 18% when healing a hero with less than 30%, which is also just a worse version of Tia's Balm, so you can insta-sell that one without looking back. Tumultuous Horn, when it's useful, it is unreplaceable. When it's useful, it is incredibly good. Keep at minimum one copy of the Tumultuous Horn, because whenever you need a healer, specifically someone like a Dolores, to be ready with their ultimate instantly upon deployment, there's nothing better than a Tumultuous Horn. There's nothing that can replace it outside maybe a Venoma Lord effect, but even then a upgraded Tumultuous Horn gives more than a Venoma Lord effect. Next on the list we've got Radiant Lantern? I guess Radiant Lantern. Increasing AoE healing effect by 3 for every one allied unit in range, stacking up to 4 times. Honestly, healer artifacts, there's so many that are just not worth spending your time on. So it's one of these artifacts you can just get rid of. Healing a unit up to full HP has a chance. Yep, random RNG and also shield giving. So also instant sell, bringing us to... let's see, where is it? The Sacred Ember increases healing effect by 20 for each ally in range, reduces healing effect. Another trash tier, you can just instantly get rid of it. Ninius Mercy when entering the field, also a worse version of a future artifact, so you can also just sell it. Pretty much everything outside of Tumultuous Horn is instantly going to be able to get rid of. Golden Scarab on the other hand, Golden Scarab is... yeah, honestly, for most healers, if you want these healers to use their ultimates more, if you want to use it on, for example, a Dolores to offset gearing requirements, if you have it at 25, it's still one of the best or the best you can use on a Dolores. If you don't have it on 25 yet, Keen Wisdom will still outshine it, but you do have the extra rage region, so it's always going to find a place on heroes that you just want to have shorter downtimes between their ultimates. Bringing us to Elysian Epitaph, Elysian Epitaph increases the healing effect single target, which is what ST stands for, by 3% for every one ally unit present in range. So the more units in range, the better the single target healing. So it only is really effective on single target healers like, for example, Vortex, and even then it's doing a decent job, but by no means incredibly great. Giving us Euphoric Orb. Euphoric Orb is one of those artifacts, you just want a single copy of it, you're going to be able to use it, because this attack speed increase of 30 or whenever you have it fully upgraded 60. It does not stack. So get a copy of the Euphoric Orb, use it once on a hero and you're going to be fine. Tears Bomb, increasing the hero's healing multiplier when healing a hero with less than 30%. Obviously you're getting better when you upgrade it. It's the best just straight up healing artifact you can find, and the main issue I guess with healing artifacts is most of the time the exclusive for the character is better than anything a healing artifact could be giving you. Bright Root Ring, when HP is at maximum, increasing healing effect. It's a better version of these other legendary artifacts, and overall it does a decent job. So yeah, this is kind of how you would rank them. The only artifact you might want multiple copies of is Tears Bomb, so you could put it on, for example, a Percy and an Alien for Abyss. For Abyss 1. Mage Time with Ionian Time. Ionian Time just gets outshone by Unfortunate Skull, which is a mythic artifact. You don't have to invest any resources into it. You can turn it into meteorites as soon as possible. Luck of Tyre, the only legendary artifact exclusive to the exclusive forge. Yeah, I mean, it's probably the best thing you're going to find for XP rate, but it's so niche, it's so small that yes, if you're playing XP rate, you can slap on a Luck of Tyre if you're struggling with it, but outside of that, you're not going to see any use for this artifact. Watchguard's Wisdom, increasing the chance of triggering an additional basic attack by 0.2 for every 1% increase in range. No, it's honestly just not worth it. And you can just instantly get rid of it. Even on, if you were to think about, like, for example, an Ingrid. An Ingrid is a hero that doesn't ult. Ingrid is a hero that then is always at 100% rage, meaning you would always get the most chance for basic attacks. You're going to lose out on the attack percent of the very special artifact TOT, and that's not something you want. TOT is king, as you'll learn later today, or in 2 minutes. So, now Storm, when shielded, once again, there's no reasonable way to shield anyone. It doesn't really work, and the attack buff is also way too low. Nightmare Samsara. Nightmare Samsara is the best artifact when you just want someone to ult spam. So, think about Greed, think about Mary, think about Greed and Mary are like the prime examples of heroes that just want to generate that rage so they can ult and ult and ult. And that's what Nightmare Samsara is there for, giving you rage per attacks. The Soulbinding Crystal gives you rage when killing the targets, but it's way too specific, and also it doesn't give any damage increase, so you can also instantly get rid of it. White Tower Trinket is, I guess, your best option for an artifact as long as you don't have enough Tear of Twilights. If you just get a couple of them, yes, you can upgrade them. I would upgrade 1, maybe 2, just so you have them, because you get a very nice attack increase and also a speed increase if that unit is on its own. So it's a decent artifact, but it depends on how many Tear of Twilights you'll have, which is kind of what everything here just goes by. And then we've got Spellcaster's Echo. Spellcaster's Echo is kind of like Nightmare Samsara, but it just works on a bit more specific characters. Like, for example, Twin Fiend is best in a Spellcaster's Echo because it works better out for him rage regeneration wise than a Nightmare Samsara. Before we forget about it, Heaven's Rage, honestly, with the existence of Tear of Twilight, with even the existence of Unfortunate Skull, the fact that it only gives a crit damage increase, and that also only after a crit hit, it's like B tier or C tier, but most of the time you're just gonna sell it anyway. Tome of Horror, giving you attack speed and rage regen when you're attacking slow targets. It's super niche. It works in, for example, GVG on someone like a Greed, but it's super niche. Tidal Ring, Tidal Ring is straight up trash, or also super niche, but I would just sell it. It's not really worth considering all that much. Tear of Twilight it's just too good. Tear of Twilight, how many Tear of Twilight do you need? 10? 15? 20? Tear of Twilight, you want as many as you can get. It's going to get more and more specific. With more mage content, every single mage that doesn't have a good exclusive is going to use a Tear of Twilight. So you might even be running into a scenario where you have 3 mages that all are using a Tear of Twilight and all want it at 25. So Tear of Twilight, I think as long as you have maybe 4 or 5 at 25, you should be fine. Anything past that, you can still use more Tear of Twilights. It's just how good it is. Giving you a 30% attack increase post-deployment is just way too strong. Unfortunate Sky, because Tear of Twilight is so strong, just has to be ranked lower, but outside of all the other artifacts, it's the best you can get when you don't have a Tear of Twilight available or a White Tower Trinket respectively. And it does also have the negative drawback of letting your units take more damage. Time for the final category, the Marksman, starting it off with the Pin of Precision. It was quite useful early on, but now it is a instant sell. You're not going to be able to make anything out of it. And even if you want to use it, there's always going to be a better choice. WorGuides Disguise only against anti-air. It is somewhat useful if you were to play, for example, anti-air arena or Gear 8-3, but it really doesn't do a whole lot. But if you really wanted to, you could keep a copy of it around just in case. North's Judgment, again, shield issue, nothing reliable. You can instantly get rid of it without any regrets. Broken Nightmare, also you can get rid of it because of the king of legendary fighter, the legendary marksman artifacts, and that's the Shadow Gaze. So, little story time. Shadow Gaze always said increases attack by 10% for every 5 attacks, lasts for 5 seconds, and that was it. And then the Dual Faction Codex boss came around. You used a Shadow Gaze on a Lucius, and all of a sudden Lucius was doing trillions of damage. The reason was because Lucius was able to infinitely or almost infinitely stack this. Nowadays, they've, without any great announcement, changed the description to display this while also capping the stacks. And that is, now it increases the attack by 10% for every 5 attacks lasting for 5 seconds, but it stacks up to twice. And the important part here is it goes up to 20%. So you're looking at an artifact that can grant up to a 40% attack increase, and that's the reason why it's so good. Caveat, it only works on 2 heroes currently, and that is Setram and Lucius. Setram and Lucius benefit from this artifact so much, specifically Lucius, that I'm confident in at least ranking it in S. You want a single copy of it, and if you have a Lucius, and if you want your Lucius to finally start dealing damage, slap a Shadow Gaze on him. Otherwise, you are just hurting yourself and your account. Idrit's Gaze, another straight up S tier, because what it does is when you deal crit damage, you have a percentage chance which goes higher, as well as a percentage chance to just ignore defense and magic res. So you're pretty much getting free penetration, going up to a 40% defense and magic res ignore. It's just that good. It's always going to have a place somewhere, and Idrit's Gaze is specifically good on Idril. Who could have guessed? And also a favorite to be used on someone like a Hatzit. There's the Taunting Gaze, which is an artifact that deals increased damage based on distance. There are so many other better marksman artifacts at the moment. You can also just throw this out of the window. Blightcaller's Claw. Blightcaller's Claw is the single best single target artifact you're going to find, even with the added RNG in there. Trust me, there's something with these multipliers, but Spirit Caller's Claw is always going to out damage every other single target focused marksman artifact besides exclusives. And the only time it's not as useful is if you are using it on a single target marksman that deals magic damage, so talent and hex, and then if you use it in Abyss. So it's a bit specific, but be careful that you don't use it on a magic marksman, because it's going to deal physical damage with the extra effect, negating the whole damage advantage of that character. But if you can use it, it's the best you can get single target wise. And Spirit Siphon is still good enough. It's still the second best option after Blightcaller's Claw, but outside, especially on physical marksmen, Blightcaller's Claw just out damages Spirit Siphon by quite a whole lot, almost always around a 10% difference without using it and with using it. And the only scenarios you are using a Spirit Siphon is on a magic damage dealing marksman that doesn't have an exclusive, so it's currently at the moment only Talon. If you were to use Talon for Abyss, use Spirit Siphon rather than Blightcaller's Claw, or Vaughn when he gets released later down the line, Blightcaller's Spirit Siphon for Abyss. Yeah, I mean, Blightcaller's Claw and Spirit Siphon, you want to have like 2 copies. Blightcaller's Claw, you want to have like 2 or 3 copies, because there's so many marksmen in this game that you really want to ensure that you can gear them all, especially with Gear A3 being a marksman only raid, pretty much. Reaper's Emblem, increasing your damage, and after killing the target increases additional damage. It's good, but the biggest problem here is that it's conditional upon you also killing enemies, and then if the unit that has this artifact isn't the one to make the kill shot, they don't gain the bonus. So it's not as easy to use. Bloodborne Signet can work quite well on heroes. It does work better on heroes that don't get hit, because you're reducing the max HP. So it's kind of terrible for Guild Boss 2 and Abyss 1, but if you can use it, it's at least a good option for everything that's AoE, but not super AoE. I know this seems a bit weird, but for example, Hatset, right? Hatset can make use of a Bloodborne Signet. There also was a time when Bloodborne Signet was useful in Arena, but the biggest issue and biggest drawback of Bloodborne Signet is still the fact that it gives crit damage, and crit damage is something you can gain from substats, and you always want something different on your artifact that you cannot gain from substats. So, for example, the damage increase on Spirit Siphon, or the single target damage increase on Blightcaller's Claw. Outside of those, you have Sharpshooter's Crest. Sharpshooter's Crest is by far the best artifact for anything AoE. So, for example, for Maul, for Kai, not for Nyx, because Nyx has her exclusive, but Sharpshooter's Crest is still good enough. And then Ichor Chalice. Ichor Chalice is special. When Ichor Chalice can be used, when Ichor Chalice has to be used, it's the best you can get, because it's irreplaceable. What it does is it allows to give your marksman self-sustain. So for example, a Liam can keep himself alive with this. A Hatset can keep herself alive in Gear Dungeon 2 at the top. And once again, do not buy this from the guild shop. Wait until you get a copy from it from the exclusive forge. It is not worth your guild points. Rather spend them on skill crystals or ancients, or even artifact essence. So yeah, this has been every single artifact in this game ranked and giving knowledge about on where to use it and whatnot. I hope you appreciated this, and as always, we see each other in the next one. Peace!